Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today, we're going to answer a question that honestly I thought I was done with. One that I wouldn't normally talk about here at Battleship New Jersey, except we've been getting it so much lately that we just have to answer it, even though it has nothing at all to do with the battleship. After spending 12 years working for historic ships in Baltimore, I really thought this one was behind me. But, once and for all, a poop deck is a raised deck on the back of a sailing ship. That's usually where the helm would be and where the captain would command from in battle, but not necessarily always. The origin of the word has nothing to do with the bodily function. The English version, poop, spelled P-O-O-P, comes from the French version, poupe, P-O-U-P-E. The French version comes all the way back from the Latin version, pupis, P-U-P-P-I-S. And that Latin word just means the stern of the ship. Typical Latin era warships, like ancient Roman type galleys, had a flat stern, and that's where the steersman would be, so that's usually where the trireme's commanding officer would be. We'll get back to the video in just a second, but first, we're doing dry dock tours of the battleship. Starting on April 6th and running through at least the end of May, on weekends, we will be taking groups of people into the dry dock to see Battleship New Jersey out of the water. There's a link in the description below if you're interested in participating. This is potentially a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see a battleship, especially an Iowa-class battleship, out of the water. During this era, you start to see castles. They're called castles. They look like castles, but they're not like stone built on land castles. They're usually wooden structures that have some crenellated battlements at the top. And that's where archers could fire down on other ships that they're operating alongside of. Oftentimes, larger ships would have two castles. One at the stern, or the pupis, and one at the bow. This continues to be a trend even into the artillery era, so that as you start to see artillery armed ships, their guns tend to be in these castles on the front and the back. And so the stern castle becomes known as the poop deck, a raised deck at the back of the ship, and the forward castle becomes known as the forecastle, which is just a shortened version of forward castle. Interestingly, Battleship New Jersey does have a forecastle. The exterior main deck at the bow, where all the anchor equipment is the ship's forecastle. We do not have a poop deck, though. There is no raised deck at the stern of the ship. That area is known as the fantail on Battleship New Jersey. Interestingly, poop deck as a term doesn't really come into use until the early 1700s, so it completely misses the golden age of pirates. And by the time the United States Navy starts building ships, by and large, they don't have poop decks. It's gone out of style. Continental Navy ships sort of did. Of the original 6 frigates, 5 of them were flush-decked. USS United States was built with a raised deck at the stern, but that was called a roundhouse. It was such a lightly built structure that you couldn't mount guns on it, so it didn't really meet the poop deck definition. And that gets cut off later to save weight so that they can add heavier guns in other places. By the time the ship I worked on, Constellation, comes around, U.S. Navy ships are just flush deck across the board, and they do not have anything like that, but they do start to get a raised structure right around where the wheel is that would be built from side to side across the deck. And since this structure bridged over the deck, it became known as the bridge. And that is where officers would typically command from in battle, and as ships start to be made with more superstructure on them, instead of being flush decked so they have room for masts, as you start to get superstructures, the bridge tends to be where you're steered from, but it's no longer at the stern of the ship in most cases. So, where is Battleship New Jersey's poop deck? Come on board and visit, and I'll show you where the poop deck is. We don't have one, never did. Very uncommon in the U.S. Navy. just because of the period of time when the U.S. Navy is operating. For most of the 1700s, the poop deck was in style. What obscure nautical terms do you want us to talk about in the future? Hopefully, next time you'll pick one that actually relates to this ship so we can go somewhere and show you that part of the ship, as opposed to sitting here with a model where you can see that we're flush decked and we don't have a poop deck. But let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. So really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.